The fragrance of selfless love that has drawn the world into one family. The truth of an eternal message that has been revealed through every act and word. The fulfillment in service that has been taught by relentless sacrifice. The Lord's own life is indeed His message.
Sai Ram, warm and sunny greetings from Prasanthi Nilajam. Welcome to the 14th episode of our ongoing month-long serial entitled The Message of the Lord. In the last 4 episodes, we saw what Bhagwan Baba, through his own life and through the hospitals that he has established, showed mankind how medical care for everyone must be established. In today's episode and the next 3 to follow, we shall see Bhagwan Baba's message regarding education.
Have you ever wondered what exactly the word education means? If you look up a dictionary, you would be surprised, because what you would often get there would be a circular definition like, education is the act or process of educating or being educated. Some do a bit better by informing you that education is a process involving the gaining of knowledge, and so on. In ancient Greece, Socrates argued that education was about drawing out what was already within the student. That sounds rather like Swami's definition of educare, does it not? No wonder, because Swami is actually going back a long time to an old Latin word, educare, meaning to lead out.
దీనిని ఈనాటి ఆధునికమైనటువంటి యొక్క విద్యలో ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అన్నారు.
In the modern parlance, we call it education.
కానీ ఆధ్యాత్మిక విద్యకు హృదయపూర్వకమైనటువంటి యొక్క ప్రభావము ప్రచార ప్రబోధంలో చిక్కినప్పుడే దీనికి ఎడ్యుకేర్ అన్నారు.
But the spiritual education, when once it comes out of our heart and when once we start sharing with others, it is called educare.
ఎడ్యుకేర్ అనగా లోపల ఉన్నటువంటి దాన్ని బయటికి లాగి ప్రపంచానికి ఆదర్శంగా నిరూపించాలి.
Educare meant to bring out what is latent within and to share with fellow men
ఈనాటి
outside.
ఆధునికమైనటువంటి ఎడ్యుకేషన్ గ్రంథ పరిచయంతో పరితపిస్తుంది.
The modern education is confined to textual information.
ఈ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ కేవలము గ్రంథము నుండి ప్రబోధిస్తుంది.
This education, modern, is out of books.
ఎడ్యుకేర్ అనేటువంటిది గ్రంథములకు సంబంధించినది కాదు.
Educare,
గ్రంథిని బోధించేటువంటిది.
educare is beyond books. It pertains to human heart.
Soon, we shall examine in some detail as to what all this means. But first, a few words about what Swami did as a teacher back in the very early days. For example, as Satya, he pulled elders up and asked them to stop indulging in the cruel sport of cockfighting, or the brutal bullock cart race in which these animals were ruthlessly harassed. That was a lesson in being kind to all living species and not going on the wrong path. Satya also took positive steps like encouraging bhajan singing by forming a group called the Pandhari Bhajan Group. By the wonderful example they set, these bhajan boys elevated the spiritual ambience of the entire village. No wonder that from then to now, bhajans have and continue to play an important role in Swami's master plan to achieve the collective spiritual sensitization of entire groups and via them the whole of humanity. Satya also set a wonderful example for all time by running a school for the illiterate youth of Puttaparthi who were older than him. There was no place to run the school, so young Satya did it out in the open, using the ground as a slate. Can you imagine that? Here was a small boy who was himself attending school, and yet he was ready to spend time to help those who were much older than him. Why? Because worldly knowledge is a must for making a living, and these people had to be helped to the extent possible to escape the clutches of abject ignorance and poverty. That was how it all began, with small little hints and hardly any indication of the amazing things waiting in the future. The war was waging furiously in Europe. Satya in far-away rural India changed the entire ballgame on 20th October 1940 when he quit school in order to assume his role as the avatar of the age, for which purpose, in fact, he had taken birth and assumed a human form. Noticed that when he raised the curtain, Bhagwan Baba hardly made a mission statement or anything to that effect. Instead, he began his new role with a bhajan, and a powerful one at that. That sent a silent signal that whatever he did would invariably have deep spiritual roots, while at the same time use worldly knowledge for benefiting humanity. Thus, his very first message was that life must be a three-wheeler, with spirituality being the front wheel, the rear wheels being knowledge and selfless service to society. How many of us have bothered to notice that Baba's message and teachings have always been around for the last 70 years? Yet, that was the way it was and has always been. And that is the message we now have to carefully examine, unravel, understand, absorb and follow. We begin that exercise by going back to what Socrates in ancient Greece said regarding education. As I mentioned earlier, Socrates argued that education was all about drawing out what was already within the student. Swami has reminded us of that by taking us back to the original Latin word educere, from which the word educare used by Baba is derived. Educare, Swami says, is to bring out from within what is already latent. As he once put it, it is a process of making patent what is already latent. Well, what is within us? If you recall our earlier episodes, the most important thing within all of us is the Atma. Since Atma equals God, and further, since the whole of creation came from the Atma, it means that both God and nature are within each one of us. In practical terms, that means that both spiritual knowledge as well as knowledge about nature is already latent within all of us.
All we have to do is open the treasure chest and pull out what is within. That is really what education must be all about. Now, let us look into some details. We come across various categorizations. We have informal education, formal education. We have learning by rote, learning by observation. We have secular knowledge, we have spiritual knowledge. Putting all these together, we get a multi-dimensional matrix. Sounds confusing? Don't worry. By drawing upon the teachings of Bhagwan Baba, we shall make all this very simple.
Let us start with informal learning. How many of us realize that babies learn a lot of things as they grow up just by observing things around them? If you think about it, it is really amazing. The baby sees, explores, and finally learns something by figuring out what it is dealing with. What you see here is an example of informal self-learning. That which is to be learnt about is outside, in this case as a part of manifest nature, and the baby learns by observing and absorbing. Nature is observed using the senses, but meaning is made out of information gathered using faculties that are within and built into us in advance by God. This is how the so-called inside and the outside come together. The baby tapped its latent skills inside to learn about the world outside it. To put it differently, the faculties within have to be switched on and linked to the information brought by the senses from outside. In the case of a baby which is trying to explore and learn all by itself, we have what might be called unassisted informal learning. Next, we consider a child that is with its mother. As the mother works, the child tags on and watches. Here we have a case of assisted informal learning. At times, the mother may place the child on her lap and tell stories or maybe teach a prayer. This would be informal learning by rote. There is no formal classroom, syllabus, school, etc. But learning goes on and education is imparted, in this case by the mother. It is the mother who assists from outside to bring out the latent capabilities of the child from within and make them flower.
Take the Chinese language, for example. For most of us, it is a language that is so difficult to even learn, forget mastering it. Most of the diplomats who are posted for duty in China spend a lot of time trying to learn this language. Now compare this with a 3-year-old child in a remote village in China. Just by spending time with its mother, this child is able to master this Chinese language without struggling in schools or paying hefty fees. So you see, even in informal learning, there are subtle ways in which the creator and the created come together.
Swami says, early in life, every child learns first from its mother. Later, it is father who then puts the child in a school where the teacher takes over. In every case, the child is assisted by someone or the other to bring out capabilities that are latent within. That someone is first the mother, father next, and teacher later. Mother, father, and guru all are proxies for the creator or God. Which is why ancient gurus always taught their disciples a verse, which Swami makes sure is repeated at the time of the convocation of his university. What this rather important Vedic verse declares is that Mother is verily God, Father is verily God, and teacher too is verily God. Why? Because each of them in their own way help the child to learn, meaning they help the child use latent skills to learn many things and also something about values as well as about God. Let us now focus a bit more on what exactly is to be learned and how. Knowledge of everything present in this world falls into two categories. 1. Knowledge about nature, and 2. Knowledge about the self or the Atma. In principle, nature having been born from God or Atma, whichever you prefer, knowledge of the self would include knowledge of nature as well. However, at the practical level, equipped as we are with sense organs which are meant to connect directly with the external world, there is a kind of shortcut, shall I say, for acquiring knowledge about nature. Later we shall see that this shortcut does not apply when it comes to knowledge of the self, and this difference is rather important. At this point, let me just say, there are many advantages to learning about nature by direct observation, and indeed that precisely is what humans have been doing for thousands of years. For instance, it was by following the stars and planets as they moved across the sky that ancients in all lands were able to prepare almanacs that predicted eclipses. Similarly, by watching the weather for years, humans have learned all about the best time to plant crops and to harvest them. And the list goes on.
Okay, all this is perfectly understandable. But what about this business of bringing out from within? That doesn't seem to have figured anywhere in what has just been discussed.
Baba gives the answer to that question. He says, effectively that is, when you look around, you see many things. So do birds and animals. They also see but cannot understand, whereas you can. And that is because of the special powers and capabilities that God has built into you. Those powers represent an amazing and powerful blessing. So you see, even while you're trying to study nature by observing what is outside of you, God from within gives you special tools to help you understand what you're seeing. Those tools are kept inside and have to be brought out. You must tap the inside, not merely for knowing more about the world around you, but for something else also. When it comes to using the knowledge you have gained from nature, you must again connect to the Creator or the Atma within, so that your knowledge is put to proper use. So maybe we can make better sense of what Socrates said when he declared that education is all about bringing outside what is within.
We shall pause here and ask three pertinent questions. 1. How many of us know about all this? 2. How many of the teachers nowadays know about all this? And 3. Even if the teachers do know about all this, how many of them impart it to the students? Maybe all this is so new that we are all right now feeling dizzy. But we shall make all this very clear with the following example.
Take medical science, for instance. All this knowledge has come largely from observations on the external world. However, when it comes to using that medical knowledge, it is a different story altogether. There are people who use it for making lots of money and nothing else. On the other hand, Swami's hospitals provide the counter-example. Here, knowledge is blended with compassion to provide selfless service to society. It is the same story with education as well. One can either run schools, colleges and universities as a service to society, or as purely commercial enterprises whose only goal is profit, that is, to make money. On the other hand, one could train students without any charge, infusing into them at the same time the spirit of service, so that when students graduate, they are useful to society. This service angle is a very important point, since knowledge of the world can easily be misused in many ways.
When the school, in its efforts to establish good community relations, look after the old people and orphans of the area.
We hardly spend time to think about it, but are you aware that most of the crime these days is being committed by educated people? Economic fraud, cybercrime, and even terrorism. All these are planned and executed largely by educated people. And just think of the deadly weapons, including weapons of mass destruction. Who invents them? Is it the uneducated villager or the highly trained scientists? As far as knowledge is concerned, there is knowledge related to the world we live in, and knowledge related to the Atma, or the knowledge of the self, as it is sometimes called. This means that no learning process or education is complete if it leaves out one of these two. That is to say, one cannot be a businessman and say, "I am too busy and I have no time for God." Equally, one cannot say, "I am focused on being a yogi and have no time for this world." However, we shall come to all that in subsequent episodes. What we should take care to note is that even where secular knowledge is concerned, there is an important role for the insight to play. This role has two aspects. Aspect 1 is use of faculties within, that is the brain and the mind, for learning about the world around us. Aspect 2 is to be guided by the conscience in not misusing the knowledge gained for excessive profit, for cheating, and for causing harm.
But what about the knowledge of the self, or Atma Jnana? Can that also be obtained in the same way, that is through formal education?
It turns out that this is not only a special case of education, but also has an important difference. The amazing thing about the acquisition of the knowledge of the self, or Atma Vidya as it is also called, is that it cannot even be imparted by a teacher to a student. No guru can teach it, and one cannot learn it from textbooks, internet, or any other means. I am sure you are wondering why this is so. That exactly is the question we shall now address. In a sense, the point is simple, really. Swami says that God or Atma is within all of us without exception. Remember, God equals Atma. Never forget that.
Okay, so God or Atma is within us. So what? What has that got to do with us not requiring a teacher to learn the Atma Vidya or the knowledge of the self?
Here is a beautiful answer to that question. Baba says that God equals knowledge. Just listen to this bhajan.
When you speak truth,
Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma.
Did you hear that? What does that bhajan teach us? It tells us that God equals knowledge of the self. Now this is the real point. If God, who is the same as the knowledge of the self, is already within us, where is the need for somebody else to give it to us, teach it to us, or impart it to us? You see the point? His presence within each individual means that spiritual knowledge is already within every individual.
Anantam Brahma Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma.
Okay, if that be the case, then why do people go to a guru? What does the guru do? We are told that even Lord Krishna went to a guru. There seems to be something odd about this whole thing.
That is a good point, is it not? Swami says that the guru does not impart spiritual knowledge. This sounds strange, doesn't it? If the guru does not teach anything, what on earth does he do?
ఎవరైనా సరియే
Let him be anybody.
అజ్ఞానమునకు బోధన చేసి
And in fact, the one who is ignorant,
అజ్ఞానం దూరం చేసి
one should distance from it.
ప్రేమతత్వమైన జ్ఞానాన్ని అభివృద్ధి పరిచేటువంటి వారు గురువు.
So, preceptor is the one who will help you to grow in wisdom and give up ignorance, dispel ignorance.
In case you find all this a bit difficult to understand, just think of it this way. Imagine a chimney lamp or the hurricane lamp. Today, it may be difficult to find such lamps, but they were common in many places as recently as 60 years ago. When the lamp burns, it deposits soot on the inside of the glass chimney, which then cuts down the amount of light coming out. In short, more the soot, less the light that comes out. So what does one do to fix the problem? Very simple. Just clean the lampshade. That's all. The same thing applies when one considers spiritual knowledge. However, spiritual ignorance or ajnana can prevent wisdom from manifesting itself. So, the guru drills the student or disciple on spiritual cleansing procedures. That is what a worldly guru does. He helps the students remove ajnana. By the way, Krishna went to a guru not to get any cleaning done, but just as a part of his divine play acting. And that is how our Swami also went to a school for a brief period. But when the time came, he just quit and assumed the role he had come to play.
God is referred to as the Guru of Gurus. What does that mean? If a Guru merely is a spiritual cleaning agent, does it mean that God is a super duper cleaning agent? What is it that the Lord does that is different from what a Guru does?
Lord Krishna gives an answer. Having the avatar is a double advantage, because he not only helps man clean himself, but also lights the lamp within. When God incarnated as Krishna, he taught knowledge of the self to Arjuna. In the present avatar, Swami has been teaching all of us almost all the time. You may say,
Agree that ever since Baba has declared his avatarhood, millions have flocked to him year in, year out. In fact, wherever he goes, they follow him. But when does this lighting the lamp happen? I think we seem to have missed it all.
That is an interesting question. Yes, people do flock to Baba. But have you ever taken a close look at how charged they become just by the very sight of him? Even by his very look, his proximity, his sweet smile, Swami fills our hearts with love as no one else on earth can. That is what lighting the lamp really means. No guru on earth can ever do that. That's something that the avatar alone can do. Light the lamp of love within us. That is, God as Guru is different from worldly gurus. He scrubs us by not only telling us about do's and don'ts, but also motivating us to engage in service, sing bhajans and so on. But most of all, he literally squeezes our hearts, pulling out pure love. That is something God alone can do. Who can deny that this is the ultimate in education?
Now here is a question for you. When the avatar comes down on earth in a human form, he not only scrubs us spiritually clean like the worldly guru, but also adds icing on the cake by lighting the lamp of divinity within us. But then, the avatar comes only once in a blue moon. What about the long periods of time when the avatar is not walking on this earth amidst us? Is humanity condemned to a life of spiritual darkness? Think about it and try to come up with an answer for this. In the next episode, we shall try to answer this question. But in the meanwhile, do try to come with an answer for this question by revising Swami's teachings that we have gone through in the last few episodes. That's all we have for this episode, and we hope to see you again tomorrow for the next episode. We hope that you're enjoying this series. Jai Sai Ram.